أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. I welcome you to another episode on the basis of Islamic thought and civilization. So today we shall be discussing solutions to intellectual illiteracy. In the previous class we said intellectual illiteracy is not the inability to read or write, however the inability to understand the text, the inability to apply the text to reality. So that is what we meant by intellectual illiteracy. So here today I have highlighted 4 solutions to intellectual illiteracy. The first one is reforming the method of engagement with the Quran. So that is at-ta'amulu ma'al Quran. That is the first one. And the second one is reforming educational system. That is islahul manzumati at-ta'alimiyya. So that is the second one. And the third one is reforming our thinking methodology. The method we use to think, we have to reform it. So, and the fourth one, which is the last one, is integrating the understanding of Sharia with understanding of reality. So that is al-jam'u bayna fiqhi nassi wa fiqhi al-waqi'. So that is the fourth one. So we are going to be taking each of these ways, this method, one after the other. So now when we talk about reforming the approach to Quran, here we already knew that the Quran is what originally shaped the Muslim Ummah from nothing to something, and it possesses the capacity to rebuild it today the way it built it during the time of the Prophet till the golden age of Islam. So the Ummah has all the potentials for progress and civilizational excellence. The only thing it lacks is the correct direction. It lacks the correct methodology. So the guidance lies in the Quran, provided we Muslims engage with it properly, following the methodology of the Prophet and his companions. So we have some key aspects that we have to focus if we want to reform our approach to the Quran. The first one is we have to extract the treasures of the Quran. That is, the Quran itself is full of guidance and civilizational principles, but Muslims have become distant from it due to neglect, both in recitation, reflection, and practice. That is why in the Quran, Allah says on the tongue of the Prophet on the day of judgment that Ya Rabbi, inna al-qawma ittakhadhu hadha al-Qur'ana mahjura. That is, oh my Lord, indeed my people have abandoned this Quran. So when we abandon the Quran, it means we did not extract the treasures contained in the Quran. Today we read the Quran, we memorize it. However, have you ever thought that what did Allah want me to do with what I have read today? What can I extract from what I have read today? So we as Muslims, for we to be free from intellectual illiteracy, we have to make sure we extract the treasures in the Quran. And another thing, another key aspect is that in reforming our relationship with the Quran is we have to is reflection, that is tadabbur, and not just recitation and memorization. Many verses call for reflection. It calls for reflecting upon the Quran itself. Like when Allah says, a blessed book we have revealed to you. Kitabun mubarakun anzalnahu liyadabbaru ayatihi, that they may reflect upon its verse. وَلْيَتَذَكَّرُ أُولُو الْأَلْبَابِ, and that those of understanding may take it. So it means the Quran itself, it calls for reflection, not only memorization alone. And we have some conditions for reflection. The first one is calm and careful reading. So when we are reading the Quran, we have to be calm and we have to read carefully. Allah instructed the Prophet not to rush when in recitation, and this emphasized understanding and reflection. When Allah says, I can't remember the verse very well. I think Allah said, "La ta'jal min qabli an yuqda ilayka wahyuhu wa qul rabbi zidni ilma." So that is, he's telling the Prophet not to rush in recitation. So we have to read the Quran carefully. We don't need to rush. And the second one is that reflection is more important than quantity. Most of us every day we finish a juzu, 2 juzu, 3 juzus. Within a month we finish a Quran. So, however, we are only reading. We are not reflecting. Reflecting is more important than the quantity of what we are reading. Because that is why Allah told us that Kitabun anzalnahu ilayka mubarakun liyadabbaru ayatihi. Are we really reflecting on the verses of the Quran? It's not only about reading. We have to connect the Quran to sciences. We have to connect it to economics, connect it to psychology, connect it to politics. The Quran itself, it talked about embryology. It talks about embryology. Have we ever thought about that? It is contained in the Quran. It talked about galaxies. Have we ever thought about that? So, and all other fields, they are contained in the Quran. So, when we think about the Quran, when we reflect about the verses, then we'll be able to extract the treasures of the Quran. And the third one is, you have to know the reasons of revelation of the Quran. So that is, the companions and the early scholars, they agreed that we said this help in understanding this. When we know the reasons of revelation, it will help us in understanding that as Asbabun Nuzul. It helps us in understanding the context and applying the text correctly. So why remembering the rulings that are based on general meaning, not just the specific causes? So that is, you'll be able to know the rulings that are general and the rulings that are specific in nature. So when we do that, then we'll be able to make the Quran the standard of our living. We make the Quran the standard of our job, the standard of our money, the standard of our social media, and not just on Salat alone. Not just on Salat that we recite the Quran. We make it the standard of everything. And when we do that, the result will be then the Quran stops being religious information alone. We won't see it as religious information alone, religious book alone, but it becomes the operating system for life. Because that is what Allah has made the Quran to be. However, we have limited it, we have narrowed it to being the operating system of life. To be the religious book alone. We have narrowed it to being the religious book alone. However, we have to make it the operation system of our life. So the second reform is reforming educational system. Here, we are referring to teaching how to ask, teaching how to doubt, teaching how to verify. So, because there is no doubt that in many Muslim countries today, we are experiencing an educational expansion in terms of number of institutions. The number of our institutions is increasing. Our secondary schools, our primary schools, our universities, they are increasing. The number of our students, they are increasing. However, the quality of outcomes remains weak because we are not teaching them how to ask questions. We are not teaching them how to doubt information. We are not teaching them how to verify information. So we have to teach them all this so that the outcome will become strong. So that is why educational reform is necessary. So, and taking into account the following steps for reforming education. The first one is focusing on understanding rather than rote memorization. That is the first step. We don't need that is the capacity of our mind is much. So, the way Allah created human mind, it included a large capacity of memory. So, however, educational system in most Muslim countries focus primarily on activating memory through teacher-led dictations and student memorization. As students, they only memorize, they don't understand, and we are neglecting the higher cognitive abilities, which is understanding, because understanding is much higher, more beneficial than memorizing. Analyzing is very important. Induction, deduction, synthesis, and criticism, they are also part of learning. We should not focus only on memorization alone. Most of our students, they memorize the Quran, but they don't understand. When they engage in things that are contrary to what they have memorized, then we should not blame them because they don't understand what they have memorized. We have to encourage not only memorization, let us encourage understanding, because that is even of greater benefit. Let us encourage analysis. Let us encourage deduction from what they have read. Let them be able to deduct rulings and sentences, and let them know criticism, how to ask questions, how to criticize information. So when the students are unable to do this, what happened? Intellectual illiteracy. Sheikh Yusuf Al-Qaradawi said, "Knowledge is not in the abundance of narration, but in the depth of understanding." So with this, we should know that we need understanding. We need understanding if we are to reform our educational system. We need our students to understand whatever we are teaching them, to be able to analyze it, to be able to deduce information, so to be able to criticize. So, for this reason, both the Quran and Sunnah link goodness to understanding fiqh rather than mere acquisition of knowledge. That is why there is an hadith of the Prophet that the Prophet said, "Man arada Allahu bi khairan yufaqihuhu fid-din," that whosoever Allah wants good for, then Allah is going to make the person to understand the fiqh. That is, understanding is very important. The Prophet did not say memorize, he said understanding. So, and in the Quran also, Allah says that why should not a group from every section of them go forth to gain understanding in religion and warn their people when they return to them, so they may be aware. لَعَلَّهُمْ يَرْشُدُونَ. So Allah did not say they should go and memorize about religion. He said understanding in religion. So it means when you don't understand the text, there is no way you'll be able to apply it. So we have to reform our educational system not only understanding, not only memorizing, let us add understanding, analysis, criticism to our to our educational system. So that is why fiqh is more specific than knowledge, because the word fiqh that the Prophet used, that even the Quran used, yatafaqahu, so is more deep, because it means penetrating understanding that reaches the essence of that knowledge and not merely the surface. So, and fiqh itself enlightens the mind and revives the earth. So that is the first step. Now, the second step in reforming our education is providing conditions for effective learning. That is, for education to become effective, its proper condition must be fulfilled in two aspects. The first one is the moral and intellectual aspect. Because when our students, when we don't teach them the moral aspect, then it means we are going to have an engineer that has no religion. When we don't fulfill the intellectual aspect, then we have a scholar, a Muslim that knows nothing about technology, that knows nothing about economics, that knows nothing about the reality. So our curricula should be designed alongside teachers and society to cultivate the intrinsic motivation in students for self-learning. Students should attend school or university primarily to gain truth and ask questions, while a scientific spirit is fostered in society to encourage continuous self-education. It's like what we are facing in our society today. When somebody decides to study any course, people will be talking about the employability of that course. People are not seeing what the person is studying as a tool. So any course somebody study, the course is a tool for the person to be able to ask questions, to be able to criticize, to be able to add to that field. It's not about employability alone. So that is the first aspect. So, and the second aspect, which is the material aspect, is we have to encourage practicals, because studies conducted as shows that 10% of what we read is what we will be able to remember, and 20% of what we hear is what we always remember, and 30% of what we see is what we always remember. So, and 50% of what we see and hear, we always remember it. However, 70% of what we always say, we always remember it. Because when you say something, immediately somebody asks you what you have said, you'll be able to remember again. Or maybe somebody said something contrary to what you have said in your presence. No, that is not what I said. I said this. However, 90% of what we do while performing an activity, we always remember it. So that is why we have to demonstrate, we have to include practical and visual tools for our learning to be effective. So that is the third way of reforming our educational system. And the fourth way is we have to Islamize modern sciences and modern religious sciences. So, because due to intellectual illiteracy and civilizational decline, knowledge in the Muslim world has become largely inherited. Modern sciences are imported from the West. Religious sciences are imported from earlier generations. So, both are shaped by the context in which they developed. So, classical sciences reflect past historical conditions. It doesn't reflect the present historical conditions. However, the modern sciences also reflect non-Islamic cultural frameworks. That is why religious sciences need renewal to align with contemporary realities. So, because even modern sciences, they require filtering. We have to filter, we have to sieve them through the Islamic objectives and values. When we are able to do that, so this process is referred to as modernizing traditional sciences and Islamizing contemporary sciences. So when we are able to do this, that is, we are able to modernize traditional sciences and Islamize contemporary sciences, then we are taking a step forward in overcoming intellectual illiteracy. So these are the 3 steps that we need to take for us to reform our educational system. That is, the first one, we have to focus on understanding rather than memorization. The second one is that we have to create effective learning environment. And the third one is Islamization of modern sciences and modernizing Islamic religious sciences. So that it will fit into the to the reality, into our present day society. Now let's move to the fourth solution. The third solution, that is reforming modern thinking. Now, for we to reform modern thinking, we need tools. And I've highlighted 5 tools that we need. The first tool is we need evidence first, al-burhan. Qul atu burhanakum in kuntum sadiqin. The second tool is al-muwazana, that is jalbul masalih wa dir'ul mafasid. We have to weigh the advantage and the disadvantage of an idea, of any creativity, of any innovation. And the third one is ashumul, comprehensiveness. That is, we must use the Quran, we must use the Sunnah, then we must add the maqasid and the reality for we to reform our method of thinking. It must be comprehensive. And the fourth tool that we need is an-naqdu. That is, we have to be able to criticize. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu in ja'akum fasiqun binaba'in fatabayyanu. We have to be able to criticize. And the last one is the goya. We should be able to ask that what is the maqsad of behind this ruling? What is the goya? What is the maqsad of it? So what is the purpose? So when we have this tool, then we can now be talking of reforming our method of thinking. Now, since we have the tool, then we have to identify, for we to now review our to reform our method of thinking. We should be able to identify our weakness, and we have to strengthen our strengths. So, before we can now start the step of reforming our thinking, now I've highlighted 3 steps for us to reform our thinking. The first step is eliminating sources of rigid traditionalism. That is the first step. The second one is prioritizing ideas over mere information. And the third one is expanding and developing thinking capacities. The first one, which we are going to talk, is eliminating rigid traditionalism. We have some of our scholars today. What they focus on is what the Prophet has done and the Prophet did not do. If there is anything that the Prophet has not done, they don't do it. We have to eliminate such rigid traditionalism. The Prophet did not use spoon, they will not use it. That is why this our society today, we have been affected by superstition. We have been affected by irrational thinking. We have been affected by emotional dominance and suspicious reasoning and resistance to new ideas. So we don't take new ideas. Anything that does not conform with what the prophet did, then we leave it. We forget about the methodology of the prophet. We forget about the methodology of the Quran in addressing issues. So, for we to reform our thinking, then the first thing is we have to eliminate sources of rigid traditionalism. So, and the second one is we have to prioritize ideas over mere information, because we have to build a society that generates ideas and not only memorization. So it's not only about memorizing the Quran, memorizing the Sunnah, but however, we need those that will be able to understand it and generate ideas and infer rulings from what they have read, what they have understood. So we need to encourage idea generation. We have to promote intellectual freedom for us to reform our thinking. So we have to allow expressions even if they are not perfect. However, we have to correct every error constructively. We don't need to rubbish the opinion of a scholar. If there is an error, then we have to correct it constructively, not destructively, that we tarnish the image of the person or that will give the person emotional trauma. So we have to avoid such a thing. So, and the third one, the third step is we have to expand our thinking capacities. Ibn Qayyim said, all knowledge and actions begin with thoughts and ideas. It's not about memorizing thoughts and ideas. For we to develop thinking, we must train ourselves in skills such as reading skills, writing skills, listening skills, questioning skills, and dialogue with research and analysis. We have to train ourselves on all these skills. It's not only about reading alone, not about listening alone, not about writing alone. We have to include all this. When an idea is being brought to you, then we have to be able to question such an idea constructively. You should be able to analyze any information using the revelation as your guide. So we have to expand our thinking capacities as Muslims and higher order thinking skills, which include understanding, reflection, problem solving, deduction and induction, reasoning and critique and creativity. These are also part of what we have to add to our skills. So we have 3 levels. The first level of thinking is what we have explained, that is reading, writing, listening, questioning, and dialogue, research and analysis. That is the first level. The second level of thinking, which is higher than the first level, is understanding, reflection, problem solving, deduction and induction, reasoning and critiquing, and creativity. And the third level is the ability to analyze relationships through abstraction, classification, comparison, and summarization. This is the third level. And if we can reach this the highest level of thinking, then it will lead to what? Constructive, balanced, and critical thinking. So we as Muslims, we have to expand our thinking. We have to reform our thinking capacities by eliminating rigid traditionalism, because the prophet did not do it, or we can't find it during the time of the prophet, they will not do it. No, we have to eliminate such thinking. So there is no computer during the time of prophet, no phone, then we have to neglect it. We have to eliminate such reasoning. And the second one, we have to prioritize ideas, not mere information. Not reading the Quran alone and memorizing it. So we have to understand the content of the Quran to be able to apply it to the context, to what is happening in society. And the third one, we have to expand and develop our thinking capacities. Not only memorizing, not only reading. So, and I mentioned 3 levels of thinking. So I gave us the first level, which comprises of reading, writing, listening, questioning, and dialogue, research and analysis, which we can teach our children from in primary school. When they get to secondary school, then we prioritize understanding, reflection, problem solving, then reasoning and creativity. By the time they go to higher institution, then they should be able to analyze the relationship of a text or a context. They should be able, through abstraction, classification, they should be able to summarize. So when we are able to do that, then we are reforming our method of thinking. And the last solution is combining understanding of Sharia and reality. That is fiqhul waqi' and fiqhul nas. You know, everybody that is a mujtahid, they need 2 eyes. The first eye is ainun nas, while the second eye is ainul waqi'. When we talk about ainun nas, that is, you have to understand the Quran, the Sunnah, the Ijma', the Qiyas, and the Maqasid of Sharia. You have to understand all these 5 things. Then, the second thing is you understand the waqi'. You understand economics, understand psychology, understand technology, understand politics, understand culture, understand all those things. We as scholars, we have to combine between the two understanding. We have to understand the Sharia and understand what? The reality. Here, Ibn Qayyim said, a jurist is not truly a jurist until he combines understanding of what is obligatory with understanding of reality. So, one major symptoms of intellectual illiteracy is exaggeration or understatement, either in interpreting religious teaching or evaluating real-world events. So, for we to truly understand the Sharia and reality, then we need the mastery of the Sharia itself, the text. We need the awareness of the reality, that is, the things that are changing in our society. So, the things that are happening from one era to another era. Then we must have accurate perception without exaggeration or minimization. So, also, we have to understand reality. You have to understand reality. That is, not only awareness, we have to also understand it. So, and when we talk about understanding reality, it means we have to know, to truly know how things are. So, when somebody tells you that, maybe let's say, for example, the issue of cryptocurrency, you have to know how cryptocurrency is, how it is. So, not about imagination. When you imagine, then you will make mistake in your rulings. You have to truly know what comprises of the word cryptocurrency for somebody to be able to give correct ruling. That is why we said we have to be aware of reality and understand that reality itself. Now, when we now combine the understanding of the text with the understanding of reality, then we are going to reach the level of hikmah. So, whereby we are going to place everything in its proper context. That is why the Quran says, يُؤْتِي الْحِكْمَةَ مَنْ يَشَاءُ وَمَنْ يُؤْتَ الْحِكْمَةَ فَقَدْ أُوتِيَ خَيْرًا كَثِيرًا. So, that is, Allah grants wisdom to whom He wills. And whoever is granted wisdom has certainly been given much good. So that is for somebody to be a wise person. The person will understand the text, and the person will be able to understand what? The reality. not will be aware of reality and understand it, they will be able to apply the text to reality in the proper context. So that is why for we as Muslims, as the Ummah, for we to be free from intellectual illiteracy, for we to find solution to intellectual illiteracy, we must try to apply all these 4 steps. That is, reform our engagement in the Quran, reform our educational system, reform our thinking method, and integrate understanding of Sharia with reality. And Allah has told us, so instead of us complaining that we Muslims, we are weak, we Muslims, we are not doing this, we Muslims, we are unable to do this, inna Allah la yughayyiru ma biqawmin hatta yughayyiru ma bi anfusihim. So Allah will not come down and teach us technology. He will not come down and teach us about computer science. He will not come down and teach us about embryology. He has given us guidelines in the Quran, and the Sunnah has also given us guidelines. So we have to follow the guidance of the Quran and Sunnah, then so that we'll be able to reform our educational system, we'll be able to reform our system. Then we Muslims will be able to come back to the time of the golden age of Islam. So